the Qatar Grand Prix provided an exhilarating rollercoaster of a race, with Red Bull experiencing a wide range of emotions. They savored the euphoria of Max Verstappen clinching the Drivers' Championship, but their excitement plummeted like a stomach-dropping fall when Sergio Perez faced difficulties. Today, we'll delve into Red Bull's most pressing issue and why it's unlikely to be sustainable next season. Let's dive right in. If we use the Qatar Grand Prix as a benchmark, it wouldn't be surprising if Formula One introduces maximum stint lengths for tyres in the upcoming season. The race was action-packed, pushing the limits of how long drivers could keep a tyre in optimal condition. Notably, Max Verstappen's fastest lap during the race was just 0.4 of a second shy of his qualifying time. Throughout the race, drivers pushed their cars to the limit, as exemplified by Lando Norris, who expressed having more pace during the start of his second stint. And let's not forget George Russell's remarkable performance. He earned my Driver of the Day title, although Oscar Piastri, capitalizing on the early Mercedes collision and delivering the best race of his career, also deserved praise. The incident on lap 1, where Hamilton turned into Russell, prematurely ended Lewis's race and sent George to the back of the grid. However, a series of pit stops under the safety car allowed George to restart the race from the 14th position out of 18 cars. Remarkably, the Mercedes showed outstanding race pace, enabling George to secure a fourth-place finish, just 34 seconds behind Max. Following the incident, Lewis acknowledged his mistake on the team radio, admitting that he was at fault for colliding with his teammate. Lance Stroll had another disappointing outing, expressing his frustration by tossing his steering wheel and clashing with his performance coach. Unfortunately for Stroll, this marked his 5th consecutive race without earning any points. It was a tough weekend for many teammates across the grid, but Sergio Perez had arguably the most challenging time of all. Checo's weekend started on a sour note as he was eliminated from qualifying in Q2 due to a track limits violation. Perez found himself off track several times over the weekend, with his excursion into the gravel during the sprint race having the most significant impact. Sergio's crash during the sprint race effectively sealed Verstappen's claim to the driver's title. Max, known for his modesty, summed up his extraordinary year by saying, "I've achieved more than I could ever have dreamed of." He emphasized living in the moment and expressed his delight at surpassing his expectations. Max's championship win underscored just how challenging Perez's weekend had been. Despite driving the same car, Perez trailed far behind, now a staggering 184 points adrift. Perez's championship hopes had long faded, as he consistently struggled to match Verstappen's performance in both qualifying and race pace. Their points tally over the weekend spoke volumes. Perez earned a mere single point, while Max Verstappen secured an impressive 33. Before delving into why this race should possibly be the tipping point for Red Bull, let's explore the team's perspective on Checo's weekend. As mentioned earlier, Perez's off-track excursions weren't limited to the sprint race. He received a black and white flag after breaching track limits 3 times during the Qatar Grand Prix, resulting in a 5-second time penalty for his 4th offense. While serving this penalty during his pit stop, he promptly incurred another 5-second penalty for exceeding track limits a 5th time, which he served at his final stop. In the closing stages, he once again exceeded track limits, and this additional penalty was added to his race time, failing to capitalize on Lewis Hamilton's retirement, which could have solidified his 2nd place in the Drivers' Championship, prompted Christian Horner to speak candidly with the media. Checo had a rather challenging race, Horner remarked. It was a tough weekend overall, beginning with yesterday's incident. Unfortunately, he received 3 penalties during the race. Without those penalties, when you add 15 seconds to his time, he would have been much higher up in terms of points, especially on a day when Lewis failed to score. Those track excursions during the race likely only gained him a fraction of a second per lap each time. However, the 15-second penalty he incurred for them cost him at least 2 positions on the track. Red Bull's pit stops to serve these penalties were notably longer than their standard stops, reflecting the team's cautious approach to ensure they didn't breach the 5-second minimum time requirement for car servicing. Without the penalties, Perez could have secured at least a 7th-place finish. These 5 points lost could potentially impact his standing in the Drivers' Championship, jeopardizing his hold on 2nd place by the end of the season. Christian Horner, for the most part, has been a strong supporter of Checo, in stark contrast to the stance of Helmut Marko, another prominent figure in the Red Bull team who had made unfortunate comments recently and has since retreated from public view. It seems that Red Bull has finally managed to rein him in. However, following the Qatar Grand Prix, Horner did acknowledge a glaring issue that Red Bull faces. He noted that Mercedes, Mclaren, and Ferrari all have tightly competitive pairs of drivers, which has become increasingly evident as the season has progressed. Horner emphasized the need to help Perez regain his peak form, attributing his current struggles more to his mental state than his physical condition. Perez is actively working with a psychological coach to address these challenges. When asked about his concerns regarding the prospect of having an imbalanced driver pairing for the upcoming year, especially with Perez locked into a contract until 2024, Horner expressed his sentiments. He conveyed his frustration, emphasizing their awareness of Perez's past capabilities. He acknowledged Perez's significant contributions to the Constructors' Championship in both the previous and current seasons. The team's fervent hope is for him to rediscover that form, as it is an essential collective need. Horner stressed that they cannot afford to have a significant performance disparity between their drivers, particularly as the grid is expected to become more tightly packed in the following season. The team will rely on both drivers to perform at their peak, and this issue looms large for Red Bull. Qatar may have been the tipping point for the team. While Red Bull has enjoyed dominant performances in both championships this season, the gap between them and other teams has begun to narrow. As the checkered flag waved after one of the most challenging races in the careers of many drivers, Oscar Piastri trailed Max Verstappen by a mere 4.8 seconds. At one point, Max's race engineer even had to urge him to pick up the pace as they saw Mclaren as a genuine threat in the race's later stages. This is a development that hadn't occurred throughout the entire season. Max has cruised to victory in nearly every race since Miami, but in Qatar, McLaren showcased their potential to challenge Red Bull. The McLaren, known as the MCL60, has demonstrated its ability to challenge Red Bull in qualifying, and at the sand-covered Lusail circuit, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris demonstrated that they are not far behind in terms of race pace. However, it's not just McLaren that has raised concerns for Red Bull. Mercedes also showed impressive speed. McLaren was genuinely worried about George Russell on soft tyres during the final laps, although he couldn't narrow the gap to Lando Norris. If Lewis Hamilton hadn't made that move at the start of the race, it might have led to Toto Wolff's signature headphone-smashing reaction. Mercedes appears to have the potential to challenge Max as well. Both these teams have made positive strides, and assuming they can at least match Red Bull's performance during the off-season, there could be fierce competition for both championships next season. It's important to note that the race circumstances did impact the final finishing times. The enforced maximum tyre usage allowed every driver to push harder between pit stops. If Red Bull had been able to take full advantage of their tyre-friendly long stints, Max's lead over the trailing cars would likely have been more substantial. Nevertheless, this race marked the first time all year that Red Bull felt genuinely threatened. If Max Verstappen had a teammate consistently securing substantial points, this wouldn't be as concerning. However, if Sergio Perez can't regain his form and consistently finish on or near the podium as expected, Red Bull and Max may find themselves in a formidable battle for both championships in the upcoming season. Red Bull cannot afford to retain Sergio Perez if he jeopardizes their chances of winning the Constructors' Championship. For races are coming up in and around Mexico, where Red Bull aims to capitalize on the commercial advantages Checo offers. Nevertheless, afterward, it wouldn't be surprising if he finds himself without a race seat in 2024. What are your thoughts on Checo's race? Do you think this race was the tipping point for him? I'm eager to hear your thoughts and perspectives. Please share them in the comments section below. Also, remember to subscribe to the channel for notifications on our future uploads, ensuring you stay informed about the developments in the 2023 Formula One season.